Hey, my caffeinated queens, and welcome to the Life's a Latte podcast. I'm your host, Mia Linares. This episode will probably bring tears to your eyes as it did to mine. We sit down with my special guest, Kate Gegas. She is a former English teacher, mom of two, author, and business owner. Her debut novel, Dear Forever, Love Always, comes out next month, December 2023, and when that time comes, I cannot wait to give you the information to go and grab her book. Trust me, you are going to want to support her after this episode. This episode tackles some tough subjects such as postpartum depression, infertility, and postpartum psychosis. Kate bravely and courageously tells her story, and I know that you will be touched. And for those of you that have gone through this, it'll be extremely relatable and make you feel like you're not alone. So grab your latte and possibly some tissues, and let's get into this episode as I sit down with Kate.
Hi, my name is Kate Gegas. Today I'm going to be sharing my story surrounding infertility and my struggle with postpartum depression.
Thanks for coming, Kate. I think that this topic is so important, and it's something that I know I don't hear a lot of Christian women talking about. I think there's like this perception that, like, because we have God, that we don't go through these things, but that is 100% not the case. So I'm super excited for you to share this story, and I know it's just going to impact people, so I'd love to hear it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I got married pretty young at 22, and about a year after we got married, we decided to start trying to get pregnant. My husband's 5 years older than me, so he wanted to have a baby before he was 30. And so we'd heard that it kind of might take a little while to get pregnant at first. And
Right.
but I'm like, I'm 23, like how hard can it be?
Yeah.
And then we started trying, and at first it was like discouraging, but okay,
Mm-hmm.
it takes time. These things take time. I was really starting to kind of like listen to my body, learn about like your menstrual cycle that we were gifted with that
Yeah.
is barely touched on in school. And
Yeah.
if I'm being honest, my mom didn't really talk to me all that much about it.
Yeah.
And so I started like learning about that, and then it started feeling more stressful the more time came. And it felt like I was, not enjoying my time with my husband, being around my husband. Um, I wasn't enjoying the day to day because things started to feel like a chore. I started
Right.
looking at my body in like a different way, like it was a broken vessel,
Right.
because that's just something we're taught, that like we're gifted as women with the ability to like bring life into the world.
And when it
And
doesn't happen as fast as we
why,
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
why wasn't my body working? It
Right.
felt like broken. Um,
Yeah.
and at this time, I was working in a high school with underserved and underprivileged children who just emotionally had their own hardships that would come to me, and that plus the struggle of like not being able to get pregnant, I started to get extraordinarily um, depressed and just feeling like I was a failure. And
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, a year and a half went by, and I'd gained almost 80 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And because I was like eating my feelings, I was drinking my feelings, and
Right.
um, just really, really suffering every time that monthly cycle came and there was no baby. I
Right.
just really started to feel discouraged. Anytime I'd go to the store and walk by like the baby clothes aisle, instead of excitement, I would feel envy and anger that I
Sadness.
would never get. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so I, um, one day decided that I'm not going to feel that way. And I went into, I think it was Kohl's, and I bought two little Pooh Bear, like one onesie and a t-shirt, like a little
Yeah.
baby t-shirt. And I pinned one next to my bed on the wall. And I pinned
Hmm.
one in my bathroom so I could see it behind me in the mirror. And I'm like, I will have this baby. Like
Yeah.
this will be my baby.
Yeah.
And I prayed over those onesies, and they kind of became like an idol almost, because
Mm.
instead of like praying to God, I
Yeah.
was praying to a onesie that it would be filled.
Oh.
Um, and so I was so deeply hurt that I missed my period, and I missed it again for 2 months.
Oh, wow.
But I wasn't getting any positive pregnancy tests.
Wait, what?
My body had, I wanted a baby so bad. It's
Yeah.
called like a hysterical pregnancy or something. My body was giving me pregnancy symptoms,
Mm.
but I didn't have a baby because I wanted it so badly. Um,
Wow.
and I remember just like feeling like kind of excited, but also confused. And like, shouldn't I have some type of, it's there. Um,
Yeah.
and we were avoiding the doctor, honestly, because I was young, and I felt like I wasn't willing or ready to go that step yet.
What step do you mean? Like seeing if there was an issue or
Yeah. Yeah.
okay.
And I think part of that was like fear of like not wanting to be told that something was actually like wrong with me.
Right.
Um, and I hate that that's how I was even viewing like
Mm-hmm.
myself and my body,
Yeah.
that like something was wrong with it. Um, because infertility is in the Bible. And
Yeah.
um and but for some reason it just felt like this innate gift, this divine feminine power that God had given me
That we're supposed to
was
be
broken.
yeah, we're supposed to be able to
Yeah.
do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Um
Okay.
so then when my period started, eventually after almost 2 months of not having one,
Mm-hmm.
um I wanted to die. I was
Wow.
so like, when I was a little kid, sorry, I'm also a very emotional person
No,
in
it's
general.
okay.
Um, when I was a little kid, I was always the mom when we played
Yeah.
pretend. I was always the girl on the soccer team that had the band-aids and the snacks for everybody. And
Yeah.
um, my students called me Mama G. And so it was like, I know I'm meant for motherhood.
It's your deepest
Why?
desire. Yeah.
Yeah. Why isn't it happening?
Yeah.
Um, so then I was on Instagram one day and saw like a post for some church downtown.
Okay.
I hadn't been to church in a minute,
Mhm.
and it was this like women's conference.
Mhm.
Now I didn't belong to a church. I wasn't going to a church at that time because I was honestly just mad at God for not giving me what I wanted, essentially throwing a fit a little bit.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm gonna go check it out. So I went to the church one time, and at that sermon, signed up for
Yeah.
the women's conference, and went and spent 4 days with women I had never met before in
I've
Myrtle
done that
Beach.
before. In Myrtle
Um,
Beach. Wow.
yeah, that was, they like rented a beach house in Myrtle, and all the ladies of the church that signed up went. And again, I didn't know a single person. I didn't tell anybody
Mm.
that Sunday that I was signing up to go. I just
Yeah.
kind of showed up at one of the locations, and the topic was like communing. So communing with yourself, others, and God. And um, I just felt like really stirred. I can't even remember where it landed. That's so bad. But I just felt called when we were communing with um, ourselves and God, just like open your Bible
Yeah.
and start reading, like wherever it landed. And it opened the passage about loving on orphans.
Mm.
And in that moment, I texted my husband. I was like, I think God wants us to adopt.
Wow.
And his response was just, okay, then we'll adopt.
Yeah.
I got pregnant a month later.
Wow.
And
You know,
looking,
so
yeah,
sorry to interrupt if I may add. Um I've heard, people talk about like as soon as like you're not doing it anymore, that's when it happens. Like not focusing on it anymore, or as soon as you decide to stop or whatever. And I remember hearing that when I was in the midst of trying and dealing with my own situation, um and it just sounded like the worst cliche ever. And it was so annoying because like I I pretty much like just completely identify with everything that you said, Kate, like your entire story. It was ditto. um, Mine was not so much infertility as much as like me and my husband got pregnant within a month of being married, and we ended up losing our baby. And I had a lot of those same emotions that you were talking about during your time of infertility. I had those emotions, dealing like with grief in losing the baby, feeling like a failure, feeling like my body was not doing what it was supposed to do. And I have an added thing with like, I have a very rare blood type. And so my blood type likes to fight off whatever that it doesn't recognize, including babies, if they had a blood that's not mine, that's not the same type as mine. And so I just felt like my body was completely failing, and it sent me down a very, very, very deep depression, for like about a year or so. I gained a lot of weight. I'm the heaviest I've ever been, even now, um, and I ate, I drank a lot more. I think I definitely was coping with drinking, even though like if anyone asked me, I would say I didn't have an issue with it, but I think I was definitely coping with it, because like you said, I didn't want to go to God about my my frustration, and I was very upset at him, very hurt. Um, and we weren't trying. So for me, it was like, you surprised me with this thing. I got excited about it, and then you ripped it away. What was the point? We weren't even
yeah,
trying. Um, and to the point where I literally, didn't want to live anymore either. I remember like laying down and saying, you know what, I would never do anything to myself, but just I was like willing my body to give up, actually praying that I just didn't wake up. That's how deep it was. So I completely identify with everything you say. And to wrap it back to what you were talking about, um, I think that it's funny because I'm pregnant now, and it happened as soon as I literally like looked at my husband and I said, you know what? If it doesn't happen this time, I think that we should take a break from trying for a while. And he goes, yeah, if that's what you want. And I was like, yeah, I think this is just causing me a lot of pain every time that it doesn't happen, and I think that we should just not try for a bit. And then there it is. About a couple days
I
later.
love that.
So,
Yeah,
um, so yeah, sorry, back to your story, but I just kind of wanted to say that, like, just like I could identify with pretty much everything you said. I know that there's a lot of women out there listening to this that can identify with it as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that with me because it does sound cliche, but you know, after I pinned those onesies on the wall, I did start trying to like get healthier and lose the weight, and I'm like, if I were to
Right.
bring a baby into the world right now, I'm not a good example of
Right.
like a healthy person.
Right.
But I was still like battling that, and I really think what it came down to is like God had the plan, but it needed to be his plan.
Yeah.
And I was trying to control it, um,
And like
instead
you
of
said,
him
it
being
it,
like,
it can't
I
be
got
an
you.
idol, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I'd turn it into. Instead of
Yeah.
instead of focusing on him, um, and the blessings that he provides and the abundance
Yeah.
that he promises, I was focusing on, well, but I want a baby and
Right.
I'll do anything to get it. And so I think that that was his way of telling me like, you are going to have a child, whether like regardless of how you get that child.
Right.
Um, but it also reminded me in that moment, like I was a teacher and I was put in a very, I don't know, peculiar situation in the way of I wasn't that much older than my students, but they still looked to me as a mother figure. And
Right.
I think had I have been a mom during that time, I
Hmm.
wouldn't have been able to help those kids
Hmm. Yeah.
in the way that I could. You know what I mean?
Yep. Hindsight's
So
always
maybe,
20/20, right?
yeah, it
Yeah.
was kind of maybe some of those kids needed me as their mother figure, and um, that could have been what, like, who knows? Who knows what
Right.
God's thinking? But um, I just remember feeling just so about myself in those moments, and
Right.
when I got pregnant, I was so excited, but also
Hmm.
afraid because I was like, I tried so hard for this. I wanted this so bad. What if I lose the baby?
Yeah. I'm going
Because
through that right
everybody's like, don't.
now.
Yeah, I
Terrifying.
remember, and I had never experienced a loss, but
Yeah.
that was still in my mind because everyone's like, don't tell people till you're at least 12 weeks, and I'm like,
Which I think is
but I
stupid, by
feel,
the way. Random side note.
yes,
I think that
it is
that's
stupid.
ridiculous. It's based in fear, and it like I am believing that this will come to pass, and so that was like I announced at 9 weeks and some change because I'm like I'm not going to live in fear of what like if this happens or if this doesn't. Like I know
Right,
what I feel like the Lord's saying to me about this child and everything's going to be okay. And if it's not,
right.
like, I have my support system.
And
I think it's
that you
stupid.
just said is the key, is why are we encouraging women to not have a support system?
Right. Which I
That
did
doesn't make
last time.
sense.
No one knew I was pregnant until I literally called my mom and said, "Hey, by the way, you were gonna be a grandma, but I feel like but I'm losing it right now." Like,
Yeah.
I felt so alone, and that's why I hate that. I think that it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Sorry. That's my
Yeah.
tangent. I'm getting off my soapbox.
No, I completely agree with you, and that's kind of what has been the catalyst in the thought process for me wanting to share about what I experienced after giving birth.
Yeah,
Um, I love being pregnant. I'm one of those women that felt amazing for the most part.
that's
Um,
good.
I felt radiant and beautiful. I was exhausted. Um, turns out it was actually a good thing I was overweight during my first
Mhm.
pregnancy because I got COVID and lost 20 pounds my first trimester.
Oh, wow. And you
And
had
had I been,
a little extra
yeah,
to shed.
seriously, and my doctor was
Yeah.
like, had you have been like the weight you were quote supposed to have been, this could have been bad because
Yeah.
I was like forcing myself to eat. But I kept losing the weight and it was scary because I didn't want anything to happen to,
Yeah.
my baby, but we didn't even know it was COVID because it was January 2020 when I got sick I was sick
Oh.
until March.
It's funny, I
And
was
then I
sick
got
in
better.
January of 2022 before it was, like, announced that it was COVID. I was so ill, and I think I had it too. I've had it twice.
Yeah.
If I count that one, I've had it twice.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I honestly, if I'm being candid, I try not to give too much power to that kind of stuff because I do believe our bodies are like strong vessels that were built to
Mhm.
fight things, and I
Yeah.
know a lot of people though were experiencing loss of their own life, of their
Yeah.
pregnancies, and um it was like people were getting really sick and couldn't explain it, and then I was like it implanted like a seed of anxiety in me
Yeah.
of like, oh my gosh, I also was going through that.
Yeah.
Thank goodness nothing happened. Um,
Yeah. Couldn't imagine.
yeah, it was hard. And then of course, when I went to give birth, the hospital I was going to, because it was August 2020, basically told me they were going to test me randomly, which I was a teacher, so I'd been at home since March, quarantined in my house, that they were going to take the baby from me for 2 weeks
What?
if I tested positive.
Are
Because
they
they
allowed to
didn't
do
know.
that?
I I have my own opinions about that. I don't believe so.
Yeah.
But I got
Maybe I'm wrong,
scared
but
and
that
switched.
sounds weird.
I have no, yeah, I don't know. I was like, that's not medical kidnapping, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Mhm.
But it was enough fear put in me to switch providers. Um,
Wow.
and so this is not extremely relevant, but during that time, I think a lot of like anxiety was kind of built within me just with the uncertainty, as I'm sure it was with a lot of other people.
Right.
Um, and so when I went to give birth at the birth center here in Charleston, it was a great experience. I loved the staff there. Um, had I known what I know now, I would have gone to see a chiropractor
Mhm.
to see if the baby could have been shifted. Um, but my labor went from, and I don't want to scare any mom who goes through labor and I'll share my second birth because I do believe that it is such a beautiful and
I'm
empowering
preparing myself
experience.
to hear this.
Um, I went into labor like I was having the baby like in 10 minutes. My
Mhm.
contractions did not build. They were hot and heavy and stayed hot and heavy the entire time.
Wow.
And I don't even like to describe it as pain, but more like super intense squeezing of your abdomen.
Mm.
It's not comfortable, of course, but
Yeah.
after 30 hours,
30 hours
my
on, like, level 10? Is that what you're saying?
my body, I was
Wow.
like, and the midwives were like, like, there's not much else we can do. Let's try to get you to the hospital, get an epidural, see if it relaxes you. And I had my own reasons for not wanting to have um an epidural, again, that aren't super relevant, but that was another thing in my mind that was like, my body's failing. What the heck? And like, cool, I got pregnant, but now I can't even deliver my baby that I'm supposed to
Right.
be able to do by myself. Um, and that was hard for me. And looking back at it, I know um, that there are other things at play. My daughter kept
Mhm.
turning, so her head was like in my right hip, and maybe had I had a chiropractor come in and like align her, she could have come out.
Could
Um,
have been easier.
I, I'll never know.
Yeah.
But I still felt like a failure, and the epidural didn't work, and I went into an emergency C-section, and I felt like I was dying. Like actually, like I
Mm.
was shaking. I had the epidural shakes,
Oh,
which
no.
nobody told me those were a thing until I looked it up after. I had the epidural shakes. I have a little white coat syndrome anyway. I'm a little afraid of doctors, and that's just like a personal fear that's not
Mm-hmm.
relevant to anything. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but so I was already anxious, in labor, in pain, wanting to see my baby. And I remember them waking my husband up and telling him, like, your wife needs an emergency C-section. So they wheel me out. I don't even get to say goodbye to him.
Wow.
They're like, they're numbing me. I'm like naked on a table in front of 20 strangers,
Wow.
which I'm not a super modest person, but I'm kind of, you know what I like?
It never hit me like that you're naked in a C-section. I never thought of I mean, it makes sense, but I never thought about that.
And it didn't help that I'm drugged up and like felt like I was on Grey's
Yeah.
Anatomy because everybody was super good looking. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, I just felt so like, oh,
Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
exposed. Um, and I'm shaking and just like don't feel good. And I'm like,
Yeah.
where's my husband? Where's my sense of comfort? Where's my husband?
They didn't let him come in?
Um, that he was getting dressed. He was getting dressed. They're like, we need to get this baby out. They put the
Mm.
scalpel to my um abdomen, and I was like, I can feel that. Like my body like metabolized the pain, the numbing, whatever they were using,
Oh
metabolized
my
it to the point
gosh.
where like I could still feel it. And so they're like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, we have to put you under. I didn't get to say goodbye
Wow.
to my husband. And like in that moment I thought I was dying.
Oh my
And I was like,
goodness.
I'm not even gonna get to meet this baby.
Oh,
My husband's gonna be left alone. And I was like, I don't even know if my baby's a boy or a girl.
wow.
Like, and um when I came out of it, sorry,
Oh,
when I came
no.
out of it, uh, breastfeeding was super important to me, something I really wanted to do. I'm kind of a hippie, and I wanted my body to be able to do something, you know?
Right, right.
Like, I couldn't get
Understandable.
pregnant. I couldn't deliver the baby how I wanted to. Can I please just breastfeed?
Right.
Can I
You
feed
wanted
my
something
kid?
to go right, how you wanted it, how you planned.
Well, I've had 5 concussions and I wasn't waking up
From your C-section?
from the anesthesia, and
Oh
over
my
2 hours had
goodness.
passed. And they're like to my husband, they're like, the baby has to eat. And
Oh
my
my
husband, bless
goodness.
him, my husband was raised by a doctor, a medical family. So he stepped super outside his comfort zone. He's like, does she need to be awake for the baby to feed, or can we like hold the baby there?
Mhm.
He's holding this newborn. He doesn't know that she was a girl at this point. While having this conversation, because obviously he was the decider in that moment. And
Mhm.
they're like, I mean, we don't normally do that. And he's like, well, like breastfeeding is super important to my wife. He's like, I know the hospital has donor milk because she told me they do. She's
Mm.
like,
There you
he was
go.
like,
Good job, husband.
seriously, he was like, she
Way
said
way
no
to step
formula.
in there.
So
Yeah.
whatever we got to do.
Yeah.
And if you have to use formula, great. I didn't want that to be like my first,
Right.
if we could avoid it. And I started waking up. That my husband got them to be like, okay, well, let's try. We've never done that, but like, let's try it, type thing. And
Mhm.
as he was walking in the room with our daughter, I started waking up, and um, I said, "Oh, my baby girl."
Oh, you knew, like,
I
subconsciously?
knew. I don't know if it was
Wow.
like while I was under, I heard something, or
Mm.
but that was apparently a sweet moment, and she latched fine, and that turned out great, but I don't remember it because I was
Mm.
so
Drugged
I don't
up.
remember my first like meeting of my daughter. And
Mm.
when I came home, every time I looked in the mirror, I would cry.
Wha Okay, why were
Anytime I
you
would
crying? Because of
the
that?
C-section
Or
scar. Yeah.
oh,
Every
okay.
time I saw my C-section scar, I would cry. Every time I would just I was so ashamed of my body for being such a failure
Mm.
that um, I started to like really fall into my first bout of postpartum depression. And I would look down at my baby and think like, I know I love you,
Yeah.
but I'm so angry at my body that I wasn't feeling that sweet, the sweet like, oh, I'm holding my kid.
Right. Like
I
there was a
I never,
detachment.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
I've heard of that.
for a long time, you've heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
I felt guilty because I'm like, I know I love her. And I like logically, I wasn't feeling that way. So I remember talking with my mom about what am I supposed to be like the baby just sits there. She's like, just talk to her. It's like, about what? She's like,
Yeah.
anything. Like whatever you're thinking. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, if I told her what I was thinking, that's gonna mess her up because what I'm thinking right now is that like I'm annoyed that she's just existing and wanting to be on me all the time. And I felt so lonely
Yeah.
and I felt still so angry because recovering from a C section is the hardest thing I've ever done physically. She was almost 9 pounds at birth. And they tell you don't pick up 10 pounds. I'm like, my baby's 10 pounds.
Right.
I couldn't sleep in my bed. I was sleeping on the couch and I couldn't even go down the stairs. It was my husband's birthday a couple weeks after, and I remember just standing in the kitchen to make him a pie for his birthday
Yeah.
in just being in writhing pain. Not because he wanted that pie so badly, but because I'm like, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And I hate needing help.
Yeah.
I don't like to be a burden, but I couldn't even get in the shower without my husband. I couldn't wash
Yeah.
my legs without my husband. And every movement was a reminder that my body failed me.
Mm.
And then I started to resent the baby that I prayed for so hard.
Wow. That's got to be
I'm
so
sorry.
hard. No, it's totally fine. No.
And I attributed the way I was feeling wholeheartedly to my C-section.
Mm.
And then when I got pregnant again, I was mad. I wanted another baby because I wanted my oldest daughter to have a sibling. I wanted another baby because I knew how much I grew to enjoy my oldest daughter. I'm sorry, this part makes me.
No, no, you do not have to be sorry.
But after I had my oldest, Isla is her name, and it means strong
Mhm.
foundation in Hebrew.
That's beautiful.
Um, that was why I chose it. But when I got pregnant with my second daughter, Austin, I remember feeling scared and I remember feeling angry. And I wanted to feel excited because I really did want another baby. Um, I just didn't want to go through that experience again.
I mean, that's so
And
understandable.
yeah,
Yeah,
and you're told if you have a C-section, you're always gonna have a C-section,
right.
but that's
Mm,
not true. Like, and it's not actually it's not true. You can have a VBAC, and um, my pride came in again after having her. I got healthy because I wanted to be a good example for her, and
mhm.
um, this second pregnancy, I felt a lot better and more energetic. I felt I liked being pregnant the first time, but um, I was determined that I was not having another C-section. I was having this baby at home.
Hmm.
I could not go into a hospital again. Like going
Yeah.
even in for my prenatal checkups, um, with Austin, I would get so anxious. my heart rate was 120 resting because I just
Oh,
was
wow.
so anxious about being in a medical facility again.
Yeah.
And my husband was not on board at first, but I was like, I need this. I think part of the stress of maybe transferring to the birth center and then transferring to the hospital, I just think I was like, I want to be where I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
I want to be at home. I know what to expect this time around. I've
Mm-hmm.
prepared a lot better, my body. And worst comes to worst, there's a hospital literally 30 seconds from my house.
Yeah.
Like actually like two minutes, but and I didn't have a wild birth. I had like a trusted, you know, person in the area who's delivered babies before at
Yeah.
home. And so I wasn't like just gonna go all wild and have her in the bathtub by myself.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I still went to
Yeah.
my checkups and everything. But I was just determined. I was like, I'm not going through that again. I'm not
Yeah.
feeling this way again.
I'm smiling
I was in
because
labor for
I
4 hours.
I would do the same thing.
You did? Okay, I'm glad. Most
Yeah.
people were like, you're crazy. We didn't tell anybody because I didn't want the outside noise of you're
You
gonna
didn't
kill
tell
your
anyone you were
baby, you're
pregnant
gonna
or that you
n-
were delivering at home?
that we were delivering at home.
Oh, okay.
No one knew except for my husband and my best friend.
Hmm.
I didn't tell my sister, none of I didn't no parents, brothers, his sister's mom, no, nobody knew.
Yeah.
Because I knew who would support me and who wouldn't support me,
Right.
and I didn't need any outside noise.
Right. And that's your right. Everyone
Yeah.
doesn't have to know your plans.
I also just I know it sounds weird to people who don't believe. I just really felt safe and secure and that I knew I was going to be taken care of.
Hmm.
And I just felt different this time that like I just had like this this was repeating in my head like this is the moment for which you've been created.
Hmm.
Like you got it. And I felt like I had God in my corner this time.
Hmm.
And um my husband's dyslexic, which is relevant to what was happening when I was in labor. I had, the Bible verses on the walls with the lights and everything. My
Hmm.
husband can't read out loud. Like he really struggles. As I'm in labor, he's pouring over me all the
Wow.
affirmations, all of the Bible verses that I posted on the wall.
Wow.
Just just reading them fluidly, like
Wow.
not a single stutter, just, God prepares you for this moment. You know, you are
Hmm.
fearfully, wonderfully made. Like
Hmm.
but Esther 4:14, that was the verse that got me through. I was in labor start to finish 4 hours.
Wow.
4.
Completely different than last time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
um the woman who helped deliver Austin was like, "Tell me when you feel, you know, like the sensation of push." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I've been feeling that." Literally she was born in like less than an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was the most incredible and beautiful experience. And
No
I told
issues,
myself, I'm
no
like,
nothing went
nothing.
wrong. That's so great.
Perfect 8 pound, 9 ounce baby.
That's
And
great.
yeah, yeah, just beautiful. And um, I was like, it's going to be different this time because I'm redeemed. My birth story is
Yeah.
redeemed.
Yeah.
God has redeemed, God's redeemed my
Yeah.
story. And
Yeah.
in a lot of ways, I felt that way. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Take a moment.
And then about a week had passed, and I still didn't feel like I loved my daughter.
Oh.
And everything that my then 2-year-old was doing, Isla, made me so angry. that I was screaming, screaming
Mm.
at my sweet, sweet baby. And I was trying the tinctures and the herbal things and the this and that. And then a month had passed and I still didn't feel like I loved my baby.
So you thought that because you had a successful birth that it was going to change how you felt about your firstborn.
I thought it was
Um,
going to change not having the depression
right,
and the anger.
right.
And I thought this time I was going to get to enjoy the newborn stage that everybody talks about and loves so much.
Yeah.
And I'm still going through it. And she turned 1 on October 9th.
Hmm.
And I just started to feel better about 3 months ago, like a little bit more like myself.
Yeah.
And I look back and I don't remember, and I'm not exaggerating, I don't remember the first 8 months of my daughter Austin's life. I look at
Mhm.
pictures and I don't remember her looking like that. I look at videos I took. I don't remember taking them. I don't remember. I don't remember like taking my daughters trick or treating and Christmas.
Mhm.
I just I don't remember any of it.
Oh,
And all I could think of was I just need to stay alive today. Every day I
wow.
would wake up and I need to stay alive today. It'll get better.
Wow.
And I went back to work thinking maybe that would help, because I'm a pretty career oriented person as well. And
Hmm.
and teaching became intolerable. I got so stressed teaching and being needed there that I started yelling at my students and not
Mm.
being the teacher that I loved being. I wasn't Mama G anymore. I was
Yeah.
Miss Gegas is in a bad mood.
Oh,
Um, I came home and didn't want to see my kids.
wow.
I started organizing things. I'm a pretty type B person. I started organizing things because I'd be mad at Austin for crying. I'd be mad at Isla for laughing. I would scream at both of my two babies. I would scream at them. And I'd scream at my husband and and then I would cry and freak out and feel so guilty. And then the intrusive thoughts came
Hmm.
where I'd be at the grocery store and they'd be at home and I'd be like, I just don't have to go back. I can just not go back.
Wow.
And then I'd get all guilty and anxious, or I would have intrusive thoughts of them being hurt. Like I'm gonna come home and they're gonna be like splattered on the driveway because the windows were open and I know they're taking a nap. So I'd
Oh
like
my
leave my
goodness.
grocery cart in the grocery store because I was so overwhelmed by anxiety that these things were just popping into my head. I would drive over a bridge and I would literally think if my girls were in the car, I would just turn right, go into the water. And I wanted the thoughts to scare me. I really did. I wanted
Yeah.
those thoughts to scare me, but they made me feel better
Wow.
because every time I would come home and scream at my kids, a voice inside me was just, "You are not a good mom.
Wow.
You're a
Oh, that's
monster.
so the enemy,
Your
man.
kids deserve better than you." Who are you to scream at these kids who haven't even been on the earth for 3 years?
Wow.
And so I did. I started organizing things and labeling things and getting things in order because I feel like even as women, we have this pressure to like not ever leave a mess. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we clean up messes.
Yeah.
And so I wanted when I took my life, I wanted it to be easy
For them
for
to keep
everybody else
moving.
to, yeah.
Oh, Kate.
And I was cleaning out the nursery where I'd given birth, and I found a post-it note that had Esther 4:14 written on it.
Hmm.
And it just said, perhaps. And I know that I feel like that Bible verse is misquoted all the time, but I like
Yeah.
I like, the
I love
perhaps
it.
this is the moment for which you've been created.
Yeah.
And I found that and I heard the girls in the living room laughing to whatever they were playing. I just sat down and I sobbed. And I'm like, how am I created for this moment when I can't even be a good mom? And then something shifted. I texted my midwife, told her how I was feeling. She's like, you need to talk to somebody. You're not alone in this.
Yeah.
Other people have been through this, but I felt alone. I tried talking to a couple people. One of those people herself struggles with infertility
Hmm.
and was like, well, at least you could get pregnant.
Yeah. Ugh. The most unhelpful things that people say.
And over and over, my feelings just felt invalidated. And I knew I shouldn't be acting that way. I just literally couldn't control it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um, so I reached out to an organization to write Love on Her Arms. They like help with people who have mental illness. And I just like texted the person on their hotline for like a little bit,
Hmm.
and I felt seen. And in just that 2 minutes of feeling seen was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
God handpicked me to be their mom for
Yeah.
whatever reason. He wouldn't have blessed me with my two beautiful daughters
Yeah.
had I not been able to take care of them. How is what I'm going through going to be used to help somebody else later?
Hmm. And I will say, like, even hearing the things that you were struggling with and your thoughts and everything like that, you could tell in the underlining of your thoughts that you are a good mother just based on the thoughts that you were like. Yes, you had intrusive thoughts, but even in the midst of your intrusive thoughts, you can tell you're a good mother by some of the things that you were thinking. And every time you said it, it was like there was an underlining thing of love even in your intrusive thoughts. And it just showed like Kate, you're a great mother, you know? You're a great mother. And I don't know you too well, but even hearing in your story, like I'm just like I see how great of a mother you are in multiple things that you said, even when you were saying how you were struggling. And it's so the enemy to make you think that you're not, you know? I'm not saying like postpartum depression is a very very real thing, and in a lot of aspects I'm even nervous for it, like I told you before we started recording. um But the enemy definitely wanted to keep you there, and he wanted to kill, steal, and destroy. And I am so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that he didn't. I really am. Like, uh, I'm
I
sorry.
appreciate that.
Continue on. Yeah, I'm just like, I just felt like you
No,
needed to know that because it's coming from someone that doesn't even really know you. I could see how much you loved your kids even, like, in the midst of your intrusive thoughts. You were still thinking about them.
I appreciate you saying that because in those moments I felt just like not just like a bad mom, but like I was throwing away a gift that so many people want that I myself I'm like these are the moments that I pray for and I'm missing them.
Yeah.
And I still find myself struggling. Um and it's so crazy that your hormones can do those things to you
Yeah.
and like you said just like the enemy just like taking advantage
Mhm.
of the physical struggle and implanting the continual doubt and I mean
Yeah. Like,
self-harm looks different in so many ways
yeah.
and I started seeking comfort in other places um
Yeah.
to try to make myself better again just turning away I was turning away from God because I was so mad that like oh you're going to make me a mom but you're going to make me a bad mom.
Mhm.
So my kids are going to be one of those kids that has this sob story of, my mom was crazy and that's how I'm the person I am today. And then I started thinking about how are my daughters going to view me when they're becoming mothers? Am I going to be around to watch my daughters become mothers? And what if they're going through something like this? Am I
Yeah.
going to be there for them?
Right.
And I didn't talk to my mom about it because at first because I I love her to death. She's just not a very open and emotional person and I am so emotional that
Yeah.
I didn't want to like burden I guess her with that, which is so silly thinking back on it cuz I finally did call her. I was like, "Mom." And she's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't know what's wrong. I just feel sad and angry all the time. And every day I was waking up thinking, you just have to stay alive for one more day." And I got that from a book I read, Ed Milet's, um, The Power of One More. And I just thought, one more day. I can do anything for 24 hours. I can do anything for 24 hours. And so I finally told her, and she's like, after I had you, I was feeling that way. And so I started sitting thinking, if this is something that might be generational, I don't know how that stuff works, but like, how can I show up for my daughters in the event that they struggle with this down the line? And
Yeah.
so I started doing the little things that God put in me that bring me joy.
That's good.
Romanticizing my cup of coffee in the morning, as silly as that sounds, but just like spicing it up. God
Yeah.
gave us the ability to taste, and I love coffee,
Yeah.
and it was like those little things, sitting and just praying, drinking that cup of coffee. I
Yeah.
um I honestly sometimes the Bible is overwhelming to read, even as like
Yeah.
a former English teacher, and but I'm like, I'm just going to start with the women of the Bible because I'm feeling broken as a woman.
Mhm.
And so I started pouring into Esther, of course, and now I'm
Yeah.
in Ruth and just those small pieces of like resilience.
Yeah.
And like those women struggled too.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about the struggle because if you start to, it's you're ungrateful or you don't love your kid
Right.
or, they're a blessing. I know they're a blessing, but, I'm going through it.
Right.
There's just like a stigma around, especially I think, yeah, it's, well, have you prayed about it? Well, of
Exactly.
course I'm praying about it. Of
Oh,
course.
yeah. And that's kind of the whole reason why I did this podcast was because a lot of times when women are going through stuff, when people, but this is, geared towards women. Um, I'm not saying that the church is not helpful, but sometimes it's just, they're extremely not helpful. I guess I am saying that. And I don't have beef with the church or anything like that. I'm just saying like, um, a lot of times, people are just they're just repeating this stuff that, yeah, we know, but there's there's that one thing where your head knows what's right, but it's another thing when your heart's not connecting to your head. And I've told my husband that several times. I have faith for this, but I'm a human being, and I sometimes I can't control the fear that's in my heart over this. And sometimes, just hearing everything will be okay, God's got this is just not enough in the moment. I need to feel what I'm feeling. And um, especially when it comes to things like postpartum depression, or infertility or miscarriage, it's like you just hear these incredibly unhelpful things like it just wasn't the Lord's timing. They're with Jesus. Like, um, if you just stop trying, it'll be fine. Do this and this will happen. Like, did you pray about it? Did you lay it down at his feet? Did like all of these things where, yeah, okay, you're not wrong, but like, that's not what I need to hear right now. Sometimes you just need people to say, I'm sorry you're going through this. I can understand why you're going through this. Just not misreading you, and just a lot of times us as women we're just looking for understanding and for people to mm, um not misread what we're trying to say or what we're expressing. We just want to be heard. And
Yeah.
so
Well, something you said though too is I kind of view that a little bit as like toxic positivity.
mm,
And like I feel like a lot of times extreme sadness, anger, worry, those are God-given emotions.
yeah,
And for some reason or another, they do serve us in a way as long as they don't become the focal point. Like anxiousness, for example, is like, I believe our body's warning sign, like you're in danger, right?
yeah,
Um, and Jesus was angry
yeah, yeah,
sometimes. Like there's a time and to take away and to invalidate the way somebody's feeling does the opposite of helping.
right,
And sometimes it really is just like, I am sorry you're feeling this way. You have the right to feel this way.
yeah,
What can I do to alleviate some of that?
yes,
How can I
yes,
help?
yes,
You know,
exactly.
not have you prayed about it? Can I come over while you take a shower?
Right. Like, how can I help you right now? Like, my
Yeah.
husband's been amazing at that, actually. He's been like, I just have these meltdowns, like, poor thing, I just exploded on him after he brought me home flowers because he didn't get something that I was craving. And like, my hormones were just like I was just like, "But I really wanted the pumpkin muffins," and he had just bought me roses, and and I I poor guy. Um, but like he's been so good at saying, "You know what? What do you need from me?" Like yesterday I had a meltdown, and like you said, there's so many times where I'm like, I've been wanting a baby my entire life, and why am I crying and sad and upset and all these things, just like And I'm just talking about in pregnancy, just feeling bad all the time and all of that. And dealing with like a guilt of like I shouldn't feel this way. And he's just been like, how what can I do? What would make you feel better? Okay, I know that, you know, this is what it is, but what is a small thing I can do to make you happy? Do you want to go to the store and get something? Do you want to go to hobby, like things that have no relation to what I'm actually upset about, but he knows it'll bring me joy. And
Yeah.
and so just things like that, like just help people, ask what they need. Some like don't try to be the know-it-all. And I get it. A lot of women want to share their wisdom, especially when they have gone through those things. But it's just wildly unhelpful sometimes.
Yeah. When I think it's important to also remember, and I sometimes I feel like we never win, but you can love something and be happy about something, but it still be hard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
um, everything comes with its challenges, work, marriage, motherhood,
Yeah.
friendship. You can still enjoy something, but it be difficult. And not being able to communicate about it,
Yeah.
that is really like I felt so alone. But when I
Yeah.
started talking about it, people are
Yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh, thank you for I felt that way.
Yeah.
I You just made me not feel crazy."
Yeah.
You know? But
Yeah.
but it's so discouraged to talk about because if you do, I've gotten messages, "Well, be grateful that you actually could have kids."
Right.
Like,
Right.
I
Like,
am sorry for your struggle.
oh my
You
god,
know,
shut up.
I
I'm sorry.
but like I'm
Yeah.
like, I am sorry for that struggle. I can't imagine that pain.
Yeah.
I want that for you. I'm still going through a hard time. Just
Yes.
because you doesn't don't understand it doesn't mean it's not real.
Two things can
And
be the
I feel
same at
like
once.
the
Yeah.
yeah, and the more I talk about it, the more people I'm seeing are also experiencing or have experienced um the same struggles, but they're afraid to talk about it
Yeah.
because they don't want to be judged or seen as ungrateful or, you know, um,
Or even
you
legally get
know,
into trouble, like,
well, right.
yeah. People aren't talking
That
like
mom,
that mom on, yeah. I think we're going to the same place. The mom that, yeah.
the nurse, she
Yeah.
needed help
She needed help.
and wasn't given the help and I could see how she could be vilified
Yeah.
until I had also had those feelings
Yeah.
because there were times where I did shut the door and put my kids in a safe spot where I knew they were safe. I had the monitor on.
Mhm.
I did not want to hear them. I did not want to be near them because I felt like if I did, I was going to scream at them. There were
Yeah.
points where, shaken baby is not because you get so like, I hate my baby. It's you're trying to calm them down and you're so
Mhm.
overwhelmed to the point where you know, and 5 years ago, I easily could have been one of those people that vilified that poor mama.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine coming out of one of my psychotic breakdowns and having heart like you know what I mean? And
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that's really, really, good that you do have God in your life as well, because it stops you from acting on those things. And
yeah.
because, like, yes, when I heard it, it was such a sad story. I didn't vilify her either, and I've never been through it, but it did get to a point where she was wrong, and
Well, yeah.
to actually act on it, obviously. But that's where, like, the Lord being in your life, like, it's there's so many things that people do that you can understand why they got there, but it's how you
Yeah.
act on it. And so like I think your story is just so important, because I know that there's so many people that have gone through what you have went through, have gone through what that nurse went through, and like we said, they're just too afraid to talk about it, to ask for help, to do um, anything about it, because if they do, people look at them like they're crazy, or they look at them like they're a bad mom, like you were saying, or they try to get their kids taken away. And
Yeah.
when all they need is just their your hormones are raging more. Like I saw something today that said that it takes 8 years for your hormones to get back to where they once
Mm.
were after having a baby. 8 years. 8 years.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I didn't start feeling like myself again until I like got pregnant and I was like, "Oh no, not again."
yeah. And so I it's just it's good for people to like hear these stories, especially coming from someone that knows God, because just because we know Jesus doesn't mean we're immune to having these thoughts. And if in fact, I feel like the enemy's going to want to attack women that have God even more, and he's going to want to
Mm.
trap them in this, because of the fact that he hates, like Satan hates us. He hates us, especially women. He hates us. And so he wants to
And
come out
especially to
of it.
see somebody come out of it.
Yes, he doesn't want you to come out of it. He wants to kill, he wants to steal, and he wants to destroy. And
Yeah.
I'm so so happy that wasn't your case. I'm so happy that you're still here, and that you're able to tell the story and help other women. And can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Where, I guess, at what point and what happened in your life that, I guess, started to bring you out of it? Like, so you said you found the note that had Esther on it. Um, what happened from there that started to bring you? I know you said in some aspects you still struggle with it, which is completely understandable. But you did say you're in a lot better place now. So, how did you
Yeah.
get to that better place?
Yeah. So I think the main thing was just um honestly communicating
Mm-hmm.
my needs. That sounds so silly, but I just felt like I always have to do it all and have like you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I should be able to do it, feel
Yeah.
fine. Um and it goes back to like that letting go of control where like I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it by myself. Um and I have battled these feelings a little bit kind of my whole life. And my favorite secular book of all time is all about like celebrating those little joys in life.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that God like put those for us to enjoy. The smell of coffee, sunrise. He could have
Yeah.
just made sunrise and sunset like a light switch, but
Yep.
instead we get miraculous beauty.
Yep.
And so I made it a choice every day to just celebrate one piece of God-given joy every day,
Yeah.
and slowly start to do that, because I feel like a lot of times we're like, I'm going to overhaul my life, I'm going to change my life, and we change too much at once.
Yeah.
And I was just feeling very called to do it in a restful way.
Yeah.
um
It's
I
great.
don't rest, and God calls us to rest,
Yeah.
and I haven't been.
Yeah.
And so I've been really leaning into that, and it started small, because if I was alone in the quiet for too long, even in prayer, those thoughts would start to surface again.
Yeah.
um and I think that's how I don't remember the first 8 months of Austin's life, is I constantly was filling my head with a social media, a movie, a book, music, a podcast, like
Distractions.
something was always, I always needed something to distract me, because if
Yeah.
I didn't have that,
Yeah.
I just went into a super dark place super fast. And so kind of like exercising that muscle of like building resiliency in the silence,
Mm.
and filling that silence with prayer instead
Yeah.
of like static and white noise and things that don't matter.
That's so good.
Um,
Yeah.
and that has really helped me also, just like God made me to be a mom. Yes. God has also put a ton of other passions on my heart. And I felt like I was losing myself in motherhood to the point where it consumed me
Yeah.
because I was so focused on not being a bad mom that
Yeah.
that's all I was doing was being a mom. And I'm like, who am I?
Who's Kate? Yeah.
I am, yeah, I am a mom, but I am also Kate,
Yeah.
and I need to be her. So doing little things like that, building up the endurance of being able to be by myself, not on my phone, just quiet,
Yeah.
um, in prayer, finding the like little pieces of joy in the seemingly mundane. Those little things have really helped me. Obviously, eventually starting to move more, eat better, like those things, we're programmed, right? We're built to
Right.
move. We're built to eat a certain way.
Yeah.
Um, but I couldn't even get to that point because I was so depressed. I was like, we're eating, grilled cheese and tomato soup every day or mac and cheese because I couldn't function. I was doing just enough, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to look back at my life, and I didn't want our daughters to look back at their childhood
Yeah.
and see that we were just existing.
Right.
I wanted them to say like, there's a Casting Crown song. Um, we were made to thrive,
Hmm.
and I'm like, okay, so we were made to more than just survive. We were made to thrive.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing. How can we get there? And
Yeah.
I prayed about it, and God put one word in my head, and it was rest. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'll start there. So I've been
So
doing little things
important.
to rest here and there every day, and the more I rest and the more I meditate and pray and just spend time in the silence, the better I am feeling. And I
Wow.
was so afraid of the silence for so long because those were the times where the enemy would like creep in. But
Yeah. You're always
yeah,
told like an idle mind is the devil's playground. And so when you're going through stuff, you try to distract your mind as much as you can to not be in silence. I've dealt with that too. I'm trying to break out of that. Stop, read a book, just sit there, like learning to be okay with the silence. And cuz a lot of times the more distracted you are, the less you can hear God speaking to you in those silent
yeah,
moments. And he wants to talk to you throughout the entire day. But a lot of times, we wonder why things aren't changing in our lives, but we're not taking time to listen to him or listen for him. And so it just, you saying like you resting and stuff was what like started to like really bring you out of that. Just makes so much sense. But I do have a last question for you.
okay.
What piece of advice would you give someone in your situation, or dealing with infertility, or pregnancy loss, or whatever it may be?
Yeah, I think um, if I had to say like one thing, it's we track silly things like, well, not silly, but we track things like our food and our water intake. Track how you're feeling.
Mm,
Um, because I found that, like I told you earlier, I couldn't even describe how I was feeling because I wasn't allowing myself to process how am I actually doing
yeah,
because I was afraid of it.
yeah,
But once I started like taking inventory of what are you feeling? Why are you feeling that way?
right,
What is triggering you? I told you I was screaming at my kids. I didn't know why I was feeling that way or why I was doing it. So I asked her, I was like, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
And then, it gives you at least like a landing ground to communicate with somebody about like your partner, right? Like your husband saying, like, I can't explain why I'm feeling this way, but this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I need help.
Yeah.
Or even just explaining to somebody you trust. Um, but yeah, I think taking ownership, like God, we're the only creatures that God gave a brain that functions the way that ours do to
Yeah.
allow us to like really self-reflect and be, intuitive and so I would say like really lean into figuring out how you're feeling.
That's so good. And
So you have a good landing ground or a good foundation on where to go from there next.
yeah. That's so good and so necessary. So thank you for that. And
Of
before we
course.
close, I want to mention your book coming out. It's called Dear Forever, Love Always. Can you just give us
Yeah.
a quick explanation on what your book's about and just some details on when we can get it and how we can support you and also letting the listeners know how to keep up with you.
Yeah, so Dear Forever, Love Always is um a fiction story that, every piece of fiction has some truth in it, but it's the main character Violet's 10-year story of self-love and self-discovery and leaning into God through the hardships that life throws
Mhm.
at her, um, not depending on the world and the substances of the world to be at the center of her life. So it's a little bit of love, but it's mostly like self-love and her walk with God through the darkest times of her life over a decade. Um, some of the topics that are talked in about in there that she goes through are things like addiction and the depression, the suicidal ideation. It is um, at its core a story of hope.
Mm.
So um, yeah, that's kind of what it's about.
And it's coming out pretty
Yeah,
soon, right?
yeah, it's coming out this December, so December
Okay.
2023. And if you want updates on it, you can go to kategegas.com. It's just my name.com because keep it easy. And then I also post updates on Instagram, which is also just at Kate Gegas
Can you spell
because
Gegas
I'm a simple
for
human.
the listeners?
Yeah, it's Gegas, like Las Vegas, but with a G.
So Kate Gegas. Gegas, did I say
Kate
that right?
Gegas.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Kate Gegas.
Okay. .com.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Or
Awesome.
just
Well,
at
I'm
Kate
excited
Gegas
to
on
read it.
Instagram.
I'm
Thank you
excited to
very
read
much. I
it.
appreciate
Yeah.
that.
And I will post about it when it's released so that, because I think this podcast will come out before then. So, once people get to know you in this podcast, I will definitely post your book and we can support you and follow you and your journey. But Kate, thank you so, so much for sharing your story. Seriously, I have to say that this is probably one of my favorite episodes I've filmed so far.
Oh,
I
thank
feel like
you.
it's just so, so needed, so important. And your story just, you're so strong. And I'm just very honored to have you on. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me the space and the platform to speak about it and allowing me to share my story with your audience. It was fun. I had a good time, an emotional roller coaster, but yeah, it was good.
Hey beauties, I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I hope that it made you laugh, cry, or touch your heart. This podcast is available on all streaming platforms. You can also watch the video version of this podcast on YouTube. If you have a story that you would like to share, feel free to email me at podcast@lifesalate.com. Also, be sure to follow us on social media at Life's a Latte Podcast across all platforms. This way you know when a new episode drops. Do me a big favor and follow and subscribe. And while you're at it, make sure to share this podcast with a friend. I'm sure that there are other people that need or want to hear it. Ciao for now.